Hey there everyone, welcome back to another impressions video, and today we're going to be talking about Dark Souls 3. Um, I saved this video for a couple of reasons, because this game isn't out for you guys, and it's going to be out, well, it should be out today when this video goes up. Um, but also, I've been sick for like 3 weeks. I've been in this constant state of being sick. I'm sick right now. Um, I I was sick and then I got slightly better for a couple of days and then I was like sick for another week and then I was slightly better for a couple of days and now I'm sick again. So I've been in this like constant state of being ill. So it did afford me a lot of time to play Dark Souls though. So I guess I can talk about that and give a kind of overview of this for you guys that are probably just getting into it right now. So Dark Souls 3 came out early in Japan, and I got it at launch and played through it a couple of times. So, as I do with all my Dark Souls or Souls games, I played as a magic build first, and I played Bloodborne as a magic build first too. Um, but yeah, I always play a magic build first because it's my preferred style of play. And let me start by saying Dark Souls 3, the magic is not so hot. It's not bad. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it's not like it's not as strong as it was previously, and like it's harder to find. I think there's a lot of ways where like it's just harder to find. But I should get into this later because I should give an overview of the game. So I'll do that. First, we got Dark Souls 3. How is Dark Souls 3? It's good. It's probably the best at Dark Souls, and I'm not saying that lightly because I like all the other Dark Souls games. The thing with Dark Souls 3 is that it takes pretty much a lot of the stuff they know how of like the mechanics for the game, adds in a bit of Bloodborne, takes a bunch from everything they've done so far, and kind of takes all the best parts and puts it into one game. And that's Dark Souls 3. So it's kind of like the culmination of the Dark Souls or Soul series in general, because there's a lot of Demon Souls stuff in here too. But it's like the culmination of these things, and a lot of it kind of feels like the victory lap for Dark Souls games and Demon Souls as well, where you are literally going through locations that you've been before. So they're very familiar if you've played the other, well, mostly Dark Souls 1, but some, a little bit of Demon Souls 2, and I guess Dark Souls 2, but not as much. But there are a lot of, it's not even just things that show up again, because there are weapons and things that show up and some kind of enemies that show up again, but there are literally locations. Um, so you'll go through and you'll be like, wow, this looks familiar, and then you'll be like, oh, well, there it is. I mean, it's not just familiar, it's actually the same place. So unlike in Dark Souls 2, where it was kind of obscured where locations were supposed to be from the previous game, this game just straight up has them. It's just there. So you can literally go to places you've been before and see how they've changed and see what's different, because everything is, even though like I'm saying that there's areas that are the same, they're all changed. I mean, areas are not, you can't go to all the same areas, and there's some places you can, but you can't go to all the same areas. The enemies are not the same in those areas anyway, and also they're all different enough in appearance and kind of variation from their original location to be worth playing. Like, it doesn't feel like a cheap retread, like they've just like reused this asset. It feels like it's changed enough and looks different enough that it feels all right. So even though like you can go to some places and find items where you know they should be, um, anybody who when you get to the point, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can find, you can find items where you know they should be. You can, you know, find shortcuts where you know they should be. Um, the areas themselves end up being different because areas that you could previously go to are blocked off, and there's other areas you can now go to that were not available before. So there's things like that that make it interesting. But that's just for the kind of reused areas. There are a lot of new areas. It's not. I want to say it's not as varied as you might imagine it would be. There are a lot of different areas, but it feels like, because it feels like the victory lap, it feels like, oh, this is kind of like that area in Dark Souls, or like, and there'll be enemies from there, or you'll be like, oh, this is like actually that area from Dark Souls. Or sometimes it feels like, oh, well, this isn't the same name, but this is basically the same area as from Demon Souls. And you'll feel a lot of that happens in the game where like suddenly like things that were very important in Demon Souls are in this game, and they weren't in previous Dark Souls games. So like it's kind of the final nod, like, yeah, Demon Souls is kind of the same world, because this is the this is the same item from the game that was only in Demon Souls. It's there, and you have a hub. It's kind of like Demon Souls. It's a little different, but like you have, it's not like the same kind of thing where you touch a rock and go to a blocked off area, but you do go have a hub that's the like Firelink Shrine, and you initially, when I mean I was streaming this initially when I was playing, and I came to a point where right in the beginning where I got to Firelink Shrine, I was just like, what the hell do I do? Where do I go? There's nowhere to go out of Firelink Shrine. You can only go back to the beginning. And I found that, there's like one point in the game where I felt like it was totally not intuitive like a normal Dark Souls game would be, because, generally if you wander around enough, you'll find new places that you haven't been to. But to get to the first area besides the Firelink Shrine, like kind of tutorial area, to get out of that area, you literally have to warp on the bonfire without going to the area first. Like you're warping to an area that you've never been to, which is something that only happens once. It only happens once in the game too, right in the beginning, and it never happens again. You're never like using the bonfire to randomly go to some place that you've never been. It only happens that one time, which makes it weird. It feels weird, like you go through and you feel like, man, this should have not happened this way. It should have been, I should have been able to walk to this place, because it's totally not intuitive and not like anything else that's ever happened in a Dark Souls game. Like, you never warp to some place you've never been before. You're always warping between bonfires you've already been to. So it took me a while, and like somebody in the stream had to tell me, like, hey, you have to warp from the bonfire. So like, oh, I didn't know that. How would I have known that? That's like maybe my only complaint actually for most of Dark Souls 3. Beyond that initial part where I was just like, what the hell with the warping on the bonfire? Everything is really good in this. It The combat is a little faster, and I feel like stamina is builds up a bit faster, so it's not as much of a factor. It kind of is if you're using a melee build, but it feels like it goes up pretty fast, like faster than you'd normally expect it to. So you do have like a bit of an option to play more like Bloodborne, where you're not using the shield all the time. And when I was playing this initially as the magic character, I almost never used the shield. I just dodged like it was Bloodborne. And it pretty much worked. It was fine for most of the game, playing that way. And for the most part, I didn't miss the shield when I was playing as the magic character. In my second playthrough, I played as a melee character with a shield, and I used it more than I did in the first one. But like it all again, like there are a lot of weapons in the game. There's a lot of new weapons, but there's a lot of weapons that are two-handed weapons, not like two-handed weapons like a big greatsword, but like two weapons and like one weapon in each hand. So there are a lot of opportunities to not use a shield, but the game itself is a lot more accommodating to that playstyle, I feel, than previous Dark Souls games. Especially like Dark Souls 1, where it was a bit harder to play with no shield than with a shield. This game definitely is it's like a little bit faster, I feel. So like you get that kind of feeling where you can dodge more than you would previously. It's possible also that it's just a little biased from playing Bloodborne last, that I'm just used to dodging instead of using a shield, so I just kind of adapted it to my playstyle. That's also a possibility. I don't really know, but what else? What else can I say? This game was definitely more difficult than Dark Souls 2. Um, like when I played Dark Souls 2, there were plenty of bosses, like half the bosses in the game. Like you'd walk into the room and just destroy them, like on the first try, and that's stupid easy for a Dark Souls game. This game, not so much. There weren't really many bosses that I walked in and beat on the first try, like a handful, and even those ones are really hard fought. Unlike Dark Souls 2, where you really could just like walk in and be like, yeah, this is just a boss, I'll destroy it, whatever. Um, this one had some pretty tough bosses, and then like, uh, there were some bosses that I had a lot of trouble with as the magic build, and then in my second playthrough when I got to them, it was just like, boom, dead. And like this brings me to the thing where I was talking about earlier, where playing with the magic build seems harder than playing with a melee build. Because when I played as the melee build, for example, there's one boss, like if anyone was watching me stream, like I was stuck on the boss, like it just took forever. Like I just kept dying over and over because like the magic um, is a little bit slow, and there's like multiple people on the screen attacking you. So like when you use the magic, you you kind of have like a very small window where like the boss isn't going to dodge, but also you're going to be able to hit and not be hit. So like there's a really slim margin. But when I was the melee character, it was so easy. Like I just went in there and destroyed that boss. Like didn't take anything. And a lot of the bosses ended up being that way. Like the bosses I had a lot of trouble with in my first playthrough with the magic build were ridiculously easy with the melee build. And then like some bosses that I found to be easy with the magic build were a little bit more challenging as a melee build, but not much more challenging, not to the same level as it was in reverse. So I think possibly magic is not the best route for this game, unless there's like a way to make it better that I just didn't find, which is very possible because again, I didn't use a guide for the first playthrough, and I missed a bunch of I missed a bunch of areas. Like, I missed like two full areas of the game in the first playthrough that are optional, but I missed them in the first one, and then I found them in the second one, and I thought like, oh, well, I know why I missed the areas because like I kind of went there and there was like a tough enemy in the way, and I was just like, oh, I'll just come back to that later, and just forgot about it and never went to the area. Um, so Dark Souls 3 does have a bunch of optional areas, which means optional bosses, and there are optional bosses. And the optional bosses tend to not be the hardest bosses. Um, Possibly, well, some of them are on the difficult side, but some of them are not. Um, but I want to say overall, the difficulty of the bosses is higher than Dark Souls 2. So that's a bonus. Like I felt the difficulty of this game was much better than Dark Souls 2. And it felt like a bit more of a challenge, and some of the regular enemies in the game were a bit more challenging. So I thought that was a pretty good improvement. Like it felt more like uh, punishing if you made mistakes, and I liked that. I thought that the game itself felt really nice when I was playing it. Um, like I said, there I have very few complaints about Dark Souls 3. I've seen some people complaining that like, oh, they reuse too much stuff. It's like too much nostalgia, but it's not really. I mean, characters return from previous games, which is a little weird, but it. I mean, there's a story reason. Um, so like you'll get characters that are essentially the same character from a previous game, or essentially a character from Demon Souls that has like a different name, and they're all they pretty much have different names, but they're the same characters. So you'll find, unless it's possible that they'll have the same name in the English version. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out, but some of the characters are obviously characters from previous games, but with a slightly different name. Some of the characters have the exact same name. so they're obviously the same character. And you'll find also a lot of items like boss armors, boss weapons from previous games in kind of Easter eggs. They're not really Easter eggs because you can just find them throughout the stages, but it is kind of like a throwback to the previous games. So like if you played Dark Souls, you would recognize a lot of things like not so much as like this thing is nostalgic, although they are. You do find actual items from the game though, and it is like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I think some people didn't like that, and I really liked it. I thought every time I found something, or every time I found something that was like in a previous game, I thought, oh, that's cool. The location is cool. Where it is cool. Like how you get it is cool. The people you get it from is cool. Like that kind of thing always happened, where I was just like, oh yeah, this guy is that was that guy, or like this location was that location before, or is connected to that location somehow, and it felt really nice. So I think like if you look at it very in a very shallow way, like oh they're just reusing this stuff to get the nostalgia pop, um, I guess it could be annoying. But if you think about it, think about the lore implications of it, it's a lot more interesting to me. And I thought like that was a pretty cool thing that they did with the game. And I'm saying this like there's a ton of reused bosses, but not almost no bosses are reused, and the ones that are sufficiently different to not. I mean, they look completely different, but they also have like a different move set, so it's not the same fight. It's not like Dark Souls 2 where they like straight up reuse the character. Um, it's not exactly like that. There are very few that are just straight up reuses, and the one that I'm thinking of most of all is looks a lot. I mean, the body shape is the same. You'll recognize it immediately, but the appearance of it is way different, and the move set is at least half different. So you get enough of a feel that oh, this is the same boss, but also it's really different. So you go into it and you feel good about it, all these things. Um, I don't know. Overall, Dark Souls 2 really had Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. I have such a small amount of complaints. The beyond that initial period, um, it's possible that I would say that for the sake of like giving the kind of final lap high five for all the games, it it sort of suffered a bit in the kind of variety of the stages, because a lot of the stages that you go to tend to be either town stages or castle like stages, so they're not visually the same, because some of them are like snowy, or some of them are kind of like faded nighttime-ish kind of dusk, and some of them will be brighter. But overall, the kind of feel of it is still I'm in a town, I'm in a castle, I'm in a village or something. It's that kind of feeling where the variation of it feels very similar. Like it doesn't have like a huge amount of variation between the levels, and there are, not to say that there aren't any cool levels that are different. Is like your standard kind of like if you walk here you'll get poisoned stage, swamp type of thing going on. There's that, and there's like lots of castles and towns and not cities, but you know what I mean, like kind of Demon Souls esque city areas. There's a lot of stuff like that, and it feels really nice. There are a lot of kind of the bonus areas, the not like necessary areas, are tend to be the cooler areas in the game actually, because they end up being a bit more varied in some cases. So you'll go to areas that feel like Izalith or something, and you'll know like It's not called Izalith, but it feels enough like it that you know, like you can probably find Izalith related stuff there. And then there'll be, you know, other places where you'll go through and you'll be like, oh well, that's directly from Demon Souls, even though it's not the same area name and it's, you know, the layout is sufficiently different. So that's probably one of the small complaints. But again, like I really have almost nothing to complain about. This game was so good. I can see myself playing it a bunch more times. Like I said, I've already played through it twice, and I will have to start some new characters. And there's tons of weapons like I never even tried. So the amount of weapons is way increased, and the way to, you know, build a character is like there are many multiple ways I think you can build a functioning character that will be really good. And I think the game offers a lot of kind of ability to customize things much more than maybe more than any of the other games in the series so far. And so let's think about it. I don't know how long it is. It might be a little bit short, but not. It doesn't feel too short. It might feel a little short if you miss areas. But like for example, it took me about 55 hours to go through the it my first time, and that's like kind of being incredibly thorough, meaning like I'll just walk into every little crack in the game to see if I can find stuff and walk around multiple times. So it's like it's not like a direct play like where I'm going crazy to find the to go right to the bosses or like not being really thorough. This is like being like really meticulous. Um and it took about 55 hours. The second playthrough not even close to that, like 20. And and that includes like new areas that I found. So like it was a lot shorter in the second playthrough. Um, and possibly if you aren't a playing a magic build, you will get through the game even faster in your first playthrough because like some of the time I spent besides just wandering around being stupid and doing stupid stuff, um, you know, like sometimes I just get stuck on a boss and I'd have to like go through like generally I try not to use any summons on the first playthrough either. I don't really I just want to kind of go through it and get used to it. So like once I get to the bosses that I feel like it's, you know, it's a hard boss or something, I'm trying to beat it by myself. So I don't care if I die 100 times on the same boss, like just without because I want to get through it without summoning. And then afterwards, like a second playthrough, who cares? I just summon anybody. I don't care. It's so it does make it faster. I mean, again, I didn't even really need to summon for most bosses in the second playthrough because it felt a lot easier as a melee build. But yeah, overall, very good, very good. I'm gonna be playing this a ton. I'll be invading you guys. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be invading you or playing as a like pink sign crazed phantom. That's a new thing that's in the game. There are a bunch of like covenants you can join. Then some of them are old covenants and some of them are new covenants. Um, and you'll find that like you can switch between the covenants on the fly. Like there's an item to equip that will like let you join a covenant. And some of the covenants are really like not easy to find. Um, they take a lot of like weird things to figure out in order to get to the covenant. In some cases, it's really easy. Like the you know the Sunbros, it was really easy to find that one. Even though it's like in a hidden room, it was easy to. I found it like really easily without any trouble. And some of them you can get really easily just by talking to people in the game. But other ones are like you need to do like part of a character's quest and like summon their sign in like a certain location at a certain time to do a battle with them, and then afterwards they'll give you like some kind of ability to join. It's really like it's kind of not intuitive for some of them. So like it, you know, there's a bit of a change. Some of them, like in Dark Souls 2, rely on being able to do certain gestures. Um, that was that's kind of weird. Like it's not totally arcane. Like you can't. It's not something you wouldn't be able to figure out, but it is something where you're just like, there are a lot of gestures, and like sometimes you'll get them and you'll be like, oh well, I must have to use this gesture somewhere because why else would I have this gesture? It doesn't do anything. It's like not a very useful gesture. Um, but and some of them like are pretty much, yeah. That by reading the description, you can kind of figure out that you have to use it somewhere. So there's an area you need to you could there's an area of the game that requires a gesture. I mean, it's not unobvious. Like once you learn the gesture, you can and you see other people doing it. That's kind of a hint. You can do it in the same location. Be able to get to do the same gesture in the location. You'll be able to get to the kind of hidden area. But they there are a lot of things where when you go through the game with the gestures, you have just so many of them. And I found I didn't even get them all. Like I don't know that I'm going to go through the game and get a platinum on this game, even though I'm going to play it multiple times. Like it's got those annoying platinums, annoying trophies for it that are like get all the magic, get all the pyromancies, um, and those just are time consuming and not fun to do. So like I might not do those, even though I don't think I did it for Dark Souls either, for the most part. Like I don't have the platinum trophy for Dark Souls 1 because it had a ton of those like get and I just like I beat Dark Souls 1 like 50 times and I still never went through and got all the pyromancies or whatever. It not on the PlayStation 3. Like on the Xbox 360 I did for almost all of them. Like I have 990 something, 985 or something for my Dark Souls thing. And then like I got it again on the PS3 and played it a million more times, but I never was like I really want to go back and get all those pyromancies or I really want to go get all those miracles. Even when I use miracle based characters, like I just don't like doing those. It's just like a too much of a hassle to go through and do all that for me. So I didn't. I doubt I'll do that in Dark Souls 3 either, unless I'm like really bored for some reason. But recently I've been too busy to, take the time out of my life to go like take a character and hunt for all the gestures or something. That's just not doing that. I think I'm done with that stuff. Um, but yeah, overall, Dark Souls 3 is awesome. If you like Dark Souls, you're gonna like Dark Souls 3 because it's it's kind of the culmination of everything. It feels, and they were saying like it will be the last one, which it kind of makes sense. I haven't gotten all the endings yet. There's one more ending I have to do, but it's like a little bit more complicated than the other two. Um, but I'll do that next. But the endings were actually pretty good. They weren't. I mean, they're short like the other games, but the second ending I got, the Darkness ending, was I actually really enjoyed that ending. I thought like, oh, it's kind of like a poetic end, and I felt like with that ending, it feels like the end of the series for at least a long time. And that's, I mean, Dark Souls comes out a lot recently. Like, there's been always something, and I don't have like series burnout like I did with Assassin's Creed, where I haven't played one for a long time because I just got burned out. But Dark Souls, like, man, if they put out another one in a year, I wouldn't be upset. It's just such a good game, and they do such a good job with it. But like, if they didn't put one out for 5 years, I mean, that would not be so hot. But I would totally be behind that too. And it feels, I mean, if maybe they'll never put another one out. Who knows? I mean, it seems like a weird choice for because it's so popular, but they were saying it will be the last one, and it might be just the last one in the kind of loop that they're in, but who knows? But it works. It works as the last one. It works as just by itself. It works if you've never played a Dark Souls game. It's overall, it's just great. I have, like I said, very few complaints and a lot of gushing to do about it because I've just had so much fun with it that I couldn't not recommend it. So, Dark Souls 3, get it. It's out now everywhere. So, go for it. See you guys next time. Next time? Whenever I talk about something else I played, Darkest Dungeon is probably next because I've finished that too. So, yeah, see you guys next time.